W Bradford Swift, my good friend, is best known for his visionary fiction and nonfiction that entertain while also enlighten and encourage his readers. He's a graduate of Clarion West in Seattle, Washington, or that's in my area, a residential workshop for writers of science fiction and fantasy. He lives in a paradise found of the mountains of North Carolina with his wife, Anne, and a menagerie of four-legged creatures, his other family members, under the pen name of Orrin Jason Bradford. He recently completed the 6-book free-form mega-series, which is really fun to read, by the way.
Nice.
The Fringe Candidate is his 25th book and his most visionary fiction at this time. So, Brad, I am so excited because I love your work. I would like to ask you some questions about this particular book. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to write this book? I understand you spent a great amount of time debating whether to write it or not.
Yes, I actually did. I battled with it for a little bit. Just kind of by way, since the book itself has a political theme, let me just kind of give a little background about that to start with. Prior to, say, 2016, if someone had asked me about my political leanings, I probably would have said, I'm mostly an inactive independent. That's how I would describe myself. And other than voting for, major elections, I pretty much didn't get involved with politics. It was just not my thing. I actually remember a number of times saying, that's just not my thing. And that started to shift with the 2016 election. I started to realize how much political decisions can affect our lives and also shape our future. And not only for me, but also for my family and my daughter and for my future grandkids. So I started to become more interested. I started to watch and listen as an author, as I tend to do. And what I saw and heard, was not excited about it. That was until I heard that Marianne Williamson had joined the race to become our next president of the United States. And when that happened, well, not long after that happened, my creative muse, as I like to call it, him, her, however you refer to it, presented me with a story idea that quickly became kind of one of those offers you can't refuse. I think that's from The Godfather or something like that. But anyway, at that point, I couldn't refuse it. That is, if I wanted to get a decent night of sleep. So I battled it for a while. I resisted it. But, sleep deprivation can be a powerful tool of persuasion. And so I finally gave in and I accepted the offer to write the story, if for no other reason than to maintain some semblance of sanity. And the interesting thing is that once I started, I found it to be one of the most exhilarating, fun experiences that I've had as a writer in 30 years of being a professional writer myself. So the story just started to flow. The scenes started to come together. The outline was just right there, And then I started to write it, and it just, the characters began to take on a life of its own, their own. And it's been very encouraging, I would say, to have a sense of partnership with my muse. It's kind of like I had this sense, now the sleeping has not gotten a whole lot better, quite honestly. Now that the book's written, I thought, the book's written, I'll get a good night's sleep. But now it's about getting the book out there, to the masses, so to speak. And so I go to bed thinking about it. I wake up in the morning thinking about it. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it and writing down notes and all that. So, but such is the life of a writer, I guess, sometimes.
Well, it sounds like this is a project of passion, and that makes sense for you. You had mentioned the characters and how they came to life. I was wondering, do you feel any of those characters have aspects of yourself, or is there a character that you resonate with more than the others?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the answer is yes. There was again one of the mostly delightful surprises, but maybe not always so delightful. There was one particular character who is actually the point of view character, the character through which the story is being told, named Braxton Grammarly. And I resonated with him quite a bit. I don't typically write in the first person. My preference is to write in the third person, but this time it just, again, one of those things, it just felt right. So since a central theme of most visionary fiction, I would say, is one of transformation, and I knew that I wanted that to be a central theme of the Fringe Candidate. So that meant that Braxton, the point of view character, needed to experience his own transformation as the story unfolds. And that meant he had to start out to be a real jerk.
Which he was.
He was, exactly. And his role in the story is he's a resigned journalist turned talk show host. And he has some, what I would say, some misogynistic leanings, maybe.
Yes.
Maybe a lot. And I was
maybe a lot.
Maybe a lot. Yeah, I was shocked and more than a little dismayed about how easy he was to write. I'd say I had the experience of my own transformation while writing the Fringe Candidate, because it's like, where is this guy coming from, and why is it coming out of me so easily? So, yeah, he's an interesting character, and I hope most people will agree that by the time we get to the end of the book, he has had some transformation.
Well, we all have those shadow sides inside of us.
Yeah.
So it was wonderful to read that transformation.
Good. Thank you.
I have another question, and you may have to correct me in the way I pronounce it. There's a villainous group in the Fringe Candidate called the Triumvirate. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Okay. Where did the idea of this group come from, and how do they threaten the visionary ideals of your novel? And I may have to return to these questions, but the third part is, are there any links to the villains of a similar nature in real life?
Yeah, very good. Well, again, this is one of those things that sometimes I don't remember where certain aspects of the story came from, but in this case, I remember very distinctly. Growing up, I had a favorite uncle. His name was Uncle Curtis. He lived in Washington, D.C., and many summers I'd go and visit him for several days, a week, or longer, and we would stay up all in time of the night having these great, in-depth intellectual conversations, about anything and everything. And oftentimes we'd also play gin rummy as we were doing it. And the other favorite thing we had to do at least once while I was there is to cook homemade donuts. That was kind of the other aspect of this. And one topic I remember that we discussed more than once was Uncle Curtis's notion that he felt that it was possible that our national government was actually run by a special ultra-secret group of powerful men that he referred to as the Triumvirate. And so when I started to write this book, which was really my first foray into writing in the world of politics, those conversations came back to me, and I thought, this triumvirate had been sitting there in my muse for years, waiting to be used. So the way I'm trying to remember the second part of the question was.
The second part is, how do they threaten the visionary ideals of your novel? And are there links to villains of a similar nature in real life?
Yeah, well, I would say first off, they are the contrast that's needed to more fully articulate the vision. Because really the vision of the book that makes it visionary fiction is that it's in a world not all that different from us, but somewhat different, called America. And in that world is where we're really out to articulate that it's possible to live in a world that's based not in fear and hate, i.e. that's the kind of triumphance approach to staying in control of the world, but also in the world that's really based in not only the world, but the politics of the world in love and acceptance, a world that can work for everyone with no one left out. So I needed a contrast there. And
Yes.
as far as the triumphants, see if I can remember the three characters. One was basically the person who represented the big pharma. The other one, and by the way, the guy who represents big pharma is never healthy. He's always battling a cold or battling something. He's probably one of the most unhealthy people I've ever written about. And there's also the military industrial complex guy. And then the third one is a big oil, the oil industry itself. So they represent those three aspects of what I say isn't working about our present world.
Right, right. There are a few elements. These are some of my favorite parts of the book. A few elements that hint of magical realism or mysticism. Why did you feel led to include those in this story that centers around a political election?
Well, first off, because I knew you'd be reading it. And I knew many of my guys, it's even hard for me to call them fans, but my readers who actually enjoy my writing. So I guess they're fans.
We are your fans.
Also enjoy it, and I enjoy that aspect of it. So other than that, I really don't know. It just, again, it was one of those that felt right. I know that magical realism is often found in visionary fiction, and so I wanted at least a little of that kind of mystical and somewhat hard to explain aspect of life to kind of balance the real worldness of the political picture itself. So I think I needed that kind of a balance.
Well, for those fans of yours who, like myself, experience those kinds of magical moments in life,
yeah,
it was really a fun part of your book.
Oh, so, good to hear.
Yeah. Oftentimes, authors have an interesting story to tell that comes from the research they needed to do in order to write the book. What part of your research did you find the most unique or interesting?
I guess, again, this is one of those surprising parts because I did not see this, starting out. But as the story started to unfold and the character started to develop, I noticed that one of the characters I did not want to give too much airtime to was the current autocratic president. His name is Oscar Wellian in the book. And by the way, that's by design. If you say his first name initial and his last name quickly, it comes out Orwellian. That was not by accident.
I love that. Okay.
But he needed to be somewhere. He needed to be somewhere in there. So I decided to start each chapter with a tweet from President Orwellian. And so I thought, well, I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter. I'm spending a lot of time on Facebook, but not much on Twitter. So I thought, where can I kind of get a little research to, on how to write a convincing tweet. And so I found on the web a website that's completely dedicated to chronicling the tweets of our current president. And it's quite sophisticated. You can do searches on, keywords and da-da-da. And so I read through a whole bunch of those and then said, okay, I kind of have the feel for how this, how this President Orwellian, Oscar Orwellian would write. And so I started writing my own tweets. And I guess I did okay because my editor, who, obviously edited the book, when he was reading the tweets, he said he felt like that I had channeled an autocratic president that we all know now in our present life. So I guess, the tweets came across okay.
I think they did. There were sometimes when I read those tweets that I wondered if you had pulled them directly from our current president.
Right. No, I intentionally did not because,
Oh, you did a very good job.
Thanks.
Wonderful fiction. So what is your definition or perspective on visionary fiction? And what led you to start writing it?
Well, that's definitely been an evolution. I think visionary fiction, and having kind of done some research since there, I think a lot of people found their way to visionary fiction by first reading it and not realizing there was such a genre. In fact, the genre, I would say, is relatively new. Nowadays, Amazon has a category called visionary fiction and metaphysical fiction that kind of group the two together. But for me, the first and foremost part of visionary fiction, the fiction part, is that it has to entertain. Because, I've been an avid reader of fiction for most of my life, since about the 4th grade on. And I read for entertainment. That's first and foremost. I want to escape into the book. But with visionary fiction, the other aspect of it is that in the process of reading and being entertained, I also learn something about life. I learned something about transformation, or I learned something that, I think that one of the indicators that I've just finished a visionary fiction book is even days, weeks, maybe even months afterwards, there's something still, I go back to it thinking about some particular lesson or insight or something about that itself. So that's the other aspect of the visionary part, is that people are left with a new possibility for their own lives.
It's a great opportunity to escape and introspect at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah.
So what's your next project?
Well, you know me, Cynthia, well enough to know that there is no just one next project. There are, I would say there are at least 3 writing projects that kind of are bidding for my attention right now. One is to go back to finishing the book Rabble, which is the 2nd book in the Cosmic Conspiracy series, of which the first book in that series is Babel. So we got Babel and then Rabble, and then I'm still trying to come up with what the 3rd title will be in the trilogy. But that's also a visionary fiction book that's very, close, to my heart. So I definitely want to get back to that. It's about 2/3 of the rough draft was written when my muse said, plopped down this other idea and said, this shall be written first. And so I finally did that. The second one is a nonfiction book that I wrote quite a few years ago called From Spark to Flame. I think it may have one of the longest subtitles in history. Subtitle is Fanning Your Passion and Ideas into Money-Making Magazine Articles That Make a Difference. I want to update that. This past year, I came out of retirement as a life on purpose personal coach and decided to, why not combine my 30 years of writing experience with my 3 decades of coaching experience. And so I'm now a write, W-R-I-T-E, write on purpose, coach itself. And I think this book could be updated and could provide a lot of assistance and make a difference for other aspiring writers. So it's it's clamoring to be updated. And then far from the last one is the second book of the Amberica series. The Fringe Candidate is book 1. I thought it was going to be a standalone. And then my muse said, no, sorry, you've got at least one more book and probably 2. And then shortly after that insight, a Unity minister that I met recently even gave me the title for the second book. So it'll be the Fringe Candidate, book 1, and the Fringe Candidate, the Fringe President will be book 2.
Oh, nice.
So, so which of those 3, or all 3 kind of clamoring with a certain amount of attention, is what's next for me?
Well, that should keep you up nights.
Well, I think right now the thing that's keeping me most up at night and throughout the evening and the like is, again, as I said, is getting the word out about the Fringe Candidate. And I want to thank you, Cynthia, for being a part of that and helping to spread the word.
I'm so grateful to be part of it. And are we going to post a link to where our viewers can find the book and access it and begin to read it?
As of now, it's on pre-order on Amazon, and the official launch date will be Valentine's Day, February the 14th, because this is a book about bringing love into our political arena and love into the world. So I thought Valentine's Day was a perfect time to launch it. You can also go to my website, my author's website at wbradfordswift.com for more information about my book, and also the Fringe Candidate, will be on the front page as well right now. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Cynthia.